Usually when we plan for our careers or our lives, we basically treat the future like we're following a GPS.
Right. Yeah. You just plug in the destination and go.
Exactly. You plug in, say, buying a house or making it to upper management, and the screen just gives you this clean, clear line to follow, like turn left in 5 years, merge onto the senior track in 10.
We just assume the roads we're driving on will, generally stay in the exact same place.
Right. But then you pull up a stack of research looking at the year 2050, and suddenly, man, that GPS screen goes completely haywire.
Yeah, it really does.
The roads aren't just shifting, the actual continents are moving. So, welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today, we are zooming past the short-term news cycle to figure out what the world will actually look like in a quarter of a century.
And we've got a massive stack of material to help us do that.
We really do. We're looking at a comprehensive economic projection from PwC, plus some really fascinating environmental and urban planning insights from Mongabay.
Not to mention a tech trend forecast from Technic Electro ITI, which looks at the immediate transitions happening right now, like in the 2025 and 2026 window.
Right. And we are anchoring all of this with a massive Delphi study by the Millennium Project on the future of work. Which, by the way, a Delphi study, for anyone unfamiliar, is just a fascinating methodology.
Oh, it's incredible. It's not just a poll. Researchers gather hundreds of global experts, anonymously give them a complex problem, and have them iteratively critique each other's forecasts.
Until they reach a highly refined consensus.
Exactly. So, we aren't looking in science fiction here. We're looking at the synthesized trajectory of our current demographics, our technology, and economic models.
So our mission today is to cut through the sci-fi tropes and show you exactly how your job, your finances, and your physical environment are about to radically change. We want to figure out how you can prepare for this transitional phase.
Because the future isn't waiting for 2050. The groundwork is being laid today.
Yeah, and to understand what you might actually be doing for work, we really have to start with the macro view, right? We need to look at where the economic centers of gravity are moving.
Definitely. Before you understand the job, you have to understand the economy it exists in.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I was looking at the PwC projection, and the global tilt is just monumental.
It is. The underlying math points to a total restructuring of global wealth. I mean, the world economy is projected to more than double in size by 2042.
Double? Wow.
Yeah, but that growth is highly asymmetrical. The power is rapidly transitioning away from the G7s of the advanced economies like the US, the UK, France, Germany.
Okay, so who has the momentum then?
The momentum is entirely with the E7, the emerging economies. That's Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Russia, and Turkey.
Let's put some numbers to that, because it's hard to visualize just how big a shift that is. The projection states that by 2050, the E7 could hold almost 50% of the world's GDP.
Yeah, half the global economy.
Meanwhile, the G7 drops to just over 20%, and the EU27 falls below 10%.
Which basically completely upends the geopolitical map we've relied on since the end of the Cold War.
Right, and the specific 2050 GDP rankings from PwC really drive this home. China sits at number 1, India at number 2, the US drops to number 3, and Indonesia climbs to number 4.
So 6 of the 7 largest economies in the world will be emerging markets.
That's wild. We're also seeing places like Vietnam, India, and Bangladesh growing at around 5% annually, which is blisteringly fast over a multi-decade timeline.
You also have a country like Nigeria, which PwC notes has the potential to leap from 22nd place all the way to 14th.
Wait, really? 14th?
Yeah, though that projection comes with a massive structural caveat. That leap only materializes if Nigeria manages to diversify its economy away from oil.
Ah, right. Being a petrostate creates extreme volatility.
Exactly. It often stifles the growth of broad, reliable political and legal institutions. If they build those institutions, the demographic potential is enormous. If they don't, well, that ranking projection just collapses.
Okay, I want to push back on these GDP rankings, though, particularly with India at number 2.
Sure.
Because if a country's total GDP is that massive, why is the per capita income in these emerging markets still projected to lag so far behind the US or Western Europe?
That's a really good question.
Is this essentially just a population math game? Like, I'm picturing a massive global corporation that boasts astronomical total revenue, but they require hundreds of thousands of employees to generate it. So when you slice up the pie, the individual paychecks are actually quite small.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your analogy captures the core mechanic perfectly. We have to separate total GDP growth from real income convergence.
Okay, makes sense.
Total GDP in the E7 is being fueled by a massive demographic dividend.
Yeah.
When they have booming populations, more people naturally creates more domestic demand and a vastly larger workforce.
Which just explodes the overall size of their economy.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean the average person on the street is suddenly living in luxury.
Right.
Not at all. By 2050, today's advanced economies will still maintain higher average individual incomes. The average citizen in Germany or the US will still take home more wealth than the average citizen in India.
But the gap is closing.
Closing at an unprecedented rate, yeah. This convergence is actually playing out exactly as the futurologist James Canton predicted back in 2006.
Oh, interesting. What did he say?
He forecasted that as the economies of China and India rose, global talent and the very nature of work would basically decouple from specific geographies.
Which is the perfect pivot to the most immediate question. If the wealth is shifting and talent is becoming untethered from geography, how does that actually play out on the ground? Like, what are people actually doing for a living?
Right.
The Technic Electro ITI trend forecast makes it really clear that we don't have to wait until 2050 to see this. The transition is happening right now in the 2025 and 2026 window.
We are in the crucible right now. The Gen Z workforce is beginning to dominate the market, bringing entirely different expectations about loyalty and flexibility.
And they're colliding with this massive technological convergence.
Yeah, the forecast lists things like the explosion of the gig economy, AI replacing knowledge jobs, the rollout of 5G, the Internet of Things, and CRISPR.
Okay, wait. I understand how AI affects a white-collar job, but how do things like the Internet of Things or CRISPR fundamentally alter the daily concept of work?
It's about the total digitization of our physical reality. The Internet of Things essentially means placing a network-connected sensor in every physical object.
Like factory machinery or your refrigerator.
Yeah, or municipal water pipes. Suddenly the physical world is generating as much real-time data as the digital world. And then you have CRISPR, which is a gene editing technology. It basically turns biology into a programmable medium.
So it treats genetics like software.
Precisely. So healthcare becomes an information technology field.
I mean, that's wild.
When you combine ubiquitous sensors, programmable biology, and 5G networks that allow for ultra-low latency communication, you create this environment where AI can manage immensely complex systems without any human oversight.
And that convergence is evolving vastly faster than employers or labor laws can adapt.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to bring in the Millennium Project's Delphi study here, because their findings on what this technology does to employment are just staggering.
Yeah, they are.
The experts they surveyed warned of a globally rising unemployment rate that could hit 24% by 2050. And some of those forecasters feared it could reach as high as 50%.
That's a heavy statistic.
It is. Are we just looking at digital Darwinism here, like a dystopian scenario where the algorithms write all the code, the robots do all the heavy lifting, and half of humanity is just permanently out of a job? Or is the very definition of a job transforming?
It's the latter. Unemployment is likely the wrong framework for this shift.
Okay, how so?
What the Delphi study is actually predicting is the death of traditional fixed contract wage labor. The 20th century model, where you join a single company, work 40 hours a week in a centralized office, and stay for decades, is what's dying.
Right, because if we're all working in the metaverse, the 40-hour work week seems like a dinosaur.
Exactly. We're moving from a multi-local and mobile workforce today into a fully virtual, metaverse-centric model tomorrow. The experts use the term knowledge nomad.
Knowledge nomad, I like that.
Yeah, you won't be an employee. You'll be an autonomous entity jumping between project-based, borderless collaborations. You might live in Mexico, collaborate in a virtual spatial environment with an engineering team in Indonesia and a client in Germany, and just receive payment via decentralized smart contracts.
Okay, let's pause on that, because that assumes humans still have skills that machines don't.
Right.
If AI can analyze a legal document in 3 seconds, or write the foundational code for a new app, what bizarre new professions are these knowledge nomads actually doing?
The sources outline a fascinating new social contract here, where pure computational power or pattern recognition is required. Machines win. But where technology inevitably fails, human-centric skills become a premium commodity.
The Delphi study lists some wild future titles, like Metaverse janitors who moderate and clean up chaotic digital spaces, algorithm insurers, biosignal trainers.
Yeah, the titles sound crazy now.
They do, but the one that really stopped me in my tracks was the empathy interventionist.
Ah, yes. It is a profound concept that highlights the limits of artificial intelligence.
Tell me about it, because I love this idea.
Well, as machine learning systems increasingly interface with humans in complex ways, imagine, say, an AI digital assistant tasked with managing the healthcare routine of an elderly patient. There will inevitably be moments of friction.
Because humans are messy.
Exactly. Humans react in highly emotional, illogical, or deeply nuanced ways that simply do not compute as data points.
So the patient gets frustrated because they're in pain. They start yelling at the smart speaker, and the AI is completely paralyzed because it doesn't understand the emotional context of a bad day.
The algorithm effectively throws an error.
Yeah.
And that is when the empathy interventionist enters the loop.
Okay.
This is a human, heavily trained in psychology and emotional intelligence, who steps in to interpret that inexplicable human behavior. They mediate the interaction, de-escalate the human, and essentially explain the emotional nuance to the machine so it can adjust its parameters.
Wow.
It's a highly paid profession based entirely on basic human aptitudes, empathy, patience, and contextual understanding.
But how do you train for a job that barely exists yet? I mean, traditional universities trying to prepare us for AI feels like a horse-drawn carriage trying to catch a bullet train.
That's a great way to put it. The sources are incredibly critical of traditional education in this regard. Traditional universities are built on 4-year accreditation cycles, but AI is operating on 6-month innovation cycles.
Yeah, the math just doesn't work.
Trying to prepare a student for the 2050 job market using a standard college curriculum is like trying to navigate a live traffic jam using a map that was printed 3 years ago. The rigidity of the degree-based system is a massive liability.
So what's the alternative?
The experts foresee education shifting towards self-managed portfolios. We already see the seeds of this with massive open online courses and decentralized peer-to-peer learning.
Oh, right, like curating your own education.
Yes. The crucial takeaway from the Delphi study is that the most vital things you will learn aren't specific technical skills. A coding language you learn today might be obsolete in 3 years.
So what are you learning then?
You are learning meta skills. This is the ability to learn how to learn. It's the capacity to navigate highly volatile environments, to quickly synthesize new frameworks, and to create your own structure in totally chaotic, unstructured working environment.
Okay, we have to address the massive elephant in the room here.
Which is,
even if someone cultivates incredible meta skills, if traditional employment collapses and 24 to 50% of people are operating outside the standard wage economy, how do they eat? How do they pay rent?
the social safety net.
Yeah, this brings up the massive debate in the Delphi study around Universal Basic Income, or UBI. 60% of their experts believe a basic income is indispensable by 2050 to prevent mass poverty.
What's fascinating here is that the forecasters are deeply divided on what happens if we decouple survival from wage labor.
Right. If traditional jobs disappear and a basic income steps in, doesn't that remove human motivation? Or does it free us up?
Well, the study presents two radically different scenarios, and we need to look at the mechanics of both impartially to understand the split.
Okay, let's look at the utopian model first. What happens if this actually works?
In the positive projection, UBI enables what they call a sufficiency economy. The mechanism relies on the cost of living plummeting.
Okay, how does that happen?
If energy is primarily cheap and renewable, and localized 3D printing handles basic physical goods, a small basic income goes incredibly far. People are freed from the drudgery of survival labor. Instead of working a meaningless job just to pay for groceries, human energy pivots towards self-actualization.
So you see a boom in community building, DIY maker spaces, localized recycling economies, and artistic pursuits. The pursuit of a paycheck is replaced by the pursuit of meaning.
Exactly. A whole society of empathy interventionists and creators.
But there's a flip side to this coin.
The dystopian view is grounded in the fear that the cost of living doesn't plummet, but wages still disappear.
Oh, that's dark.
In this scenario, wealth aggressively consolidates at the very top, held by the corporations and individuals who own the AI and the digital infrastructure. If governments fail to implement a new economic safety net, the historical precedent is clear.
The income gap widens into a chasm.
Yes, massive populations find themselves unemployable with no means of survival. This projection leads to extreme political instability, the collapse of social systems, and potentially widespread civil war before any corrective action is forced upon the system.
The stakes for how we navigate the next decade are literally existential, which actually brings up a fascinating contradiction I noticed when reading the Mongabay environmental piece.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've just painted a picture of a future where work is entirely virtual, decentralized, and borderless. We're going to be knowledge nomads collaborating in a spatial metaverse.
Right.
If that is true, why does our physical location matter at all? Where are all these metaverse workers actually living?
You're wondering why we don't all just disperse and live in remote cabins in the woods.
Yes. We have the technology to work from anywhere. Yet the data from Mongabay projects that by 2050, 75% of the global population will live in dense urban environments.
It does seem counterintuitive.
So, what does this all mean? It's like having a miraculous kitchen that can instantly cook any food from anywhere in the world, but instead of eating comfortably in our own homes, 75% of us choose to cram into the exact same tiny, overcrowded restaurant. Why are we flocking to megacities if our economic value is entirely in the cloud?
This raises an important question, and the contradiction makes sense when you look at the physical hardware required to sustain that digital reality.
The hardware.
Yeah. We conceptualize the cloud as invisible and weightless, but it is deeply physical. The ultra-low latency required for seamless metaverse collaboration, the processing power for ubiquitous AI, the dense sensor networks of the Internet of Things that requires massive, concentrated physical infrastructure.
You simply cannot maintain that level of connectivity or power generation in a dispersed rural model.
Exactly. The cabin in the woods doesn't have the bandwidth to support an empathy interventionist streaming high-fidelity biosignals.
That makes a lot of sense.
But beyond the digital infrastructure, there is a much more pressing physical driver: climate change and resource efficiency. Currently, cities consume 80% of all global energy and produce the vast majority of carbon emissions.
Well, 80%.
Yeah. As populations swell and global climate shocks become more severe, the dispersed suburban model becomes ecologically unsustainable. Cities have to evolve to survive. They cannot just be sprawling concrete hubs.
Right.
The focus of the Mongabay piece is the urgent shift towards sustainable, smart, and resilient cities.
Mongabay provided some incredible case studies on how this is being attempted too. You look at a project like Masdar City in the UAE, which was an attempt to build a fully zero-carbon, tech-utopian megacity completely from scratch in the desert.
Right.
But despite all the incredible technology, it basically remains mostly a ghost town.
Which highlights a crucial insight about urban planning. A city is not a hardware product you could just build and turn on. It is an organic, highly complex behavioral network. Top-down tech utopias almost always fail because they ignore the messy, unquantifiable human element.
You cannot mandate a culture into existence just by laying down smart grid infrastructure.
Exactly. Contrast that with Singapore, which the sources highlight as Asia's greenest city. They didn't start with a blank slate in the desert. They took an existing, highly dense, heavily industrialized space and aggressively retrofitted it.
Oh, that's smart.
They mandated green building codes by law and integrated nature directly into the existing urban core. You see a similar localized approach with the rise of massive rooftop farms in Hong Kong or the Tianjin eco-city in China, which was built over a former toxic waste dumping ground.
The success of a city like Singapore proves that the 2050 megacity requires a holistic approach. It's not just engineers laying fiber optics. You need technologists, urban planners, ecologists, and sociologists working in tandem.
You have to weave the natural biological ecosystem directly into the digital smart grid, adapting to the cultural fabric that already exists there.
So bringing this all together, what does this massive transition mean for you, the person listening right now? We've covered a staggering amount of ground today.
We really have.
We've looked at the economic power shifting from the G7 to the E7. We've explored the death of the 40-hour workweek, the rise of the knowledge nomad, empathy interventionists, and the necessity of green megacities.
But the ultimate takeaway across all these sources is that the transition phase isn't waiting for some distant date on a calendar. It is happening in the 2025 and 2026 window. The foundational structures of the next century are being poured today.
Your ability to thrive in this unrecognizable landscape depends almost entirely on cultivating those meta skills. It's about letting go of the linear GPS route and embracing continuous self-directed learning.
Absolutely.
As the gig economy scales up and AI commoditizes basic knowledge work, the people who succeed will be those who can adapt to borderless digital collaboration and create structure in entirely unstructured environments.
And crucially, whether you are an urban planner trying to retrofit a smart grid in Indonesia or an empathy interventionist mediating algorithms from Mexico, the challenges you face are fundamentally global. The experts across every study we reviewed agree on one thing: national, isolated solutions will fail. The interdependencies of climate, economy, and technology are simply too complex.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to chew on, something that logically builds on everything we've unpacked today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we eventually hand over traditional routine labor to artificial intelligence, let me rephrase. If we hand over routine labor to AI and we spend our economic lives as knowledge nomads, collaborating in a completely borderless digital metaverse,
Right.
and our physical bodies are tightly packed inside these hyper-efficient, highly localized, self-sustaining green megacities, will we eventually outgrow the need for national borders entirely?
Oh, wow. It is the ultimate logical extreme of a decentralized world.
Could the geopolitical map of 2050 look less like a collection of competing nation-states with heavily guarded borders and more like a single global network of connected city-states?
A world where your primary identity is a citizen of a specific megacity and a participant in the global metaverse, rather than a citizen of a sprawling country.
It completely recalibrates everything we think we know about the future. Keep questioning those maps, keep looking beyond the immediate headlines, and keep diving deep into the facts. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.